shit.
Welcome back to the Mantry podcast, where we try and help you cook better, and we choose to do it in audio form because we know people are busy. They don't have time to pick up a cookbook. You know, they don't have time always to get into the kitchen and practice, but you can throw this on commuting, you can throw this on cleaning the house, whatever you're doing, running errands, and you can pick up some great little tidbits every day or every week that are going to help you cook better. So let's launch into today's episode. We're covering seven cooking secrets you learn from chefs. Way back in the day, I used to be a chef at Michelin star restaurants. I did a bit of time at the French Laundry, apprenticing there. That was way before I got into entrepreneurship and started Mantry. But I got a couple secrets, and these are also just things that you see a lot in kitchens that I think people at home could benefit from. So these are 7 cooking secrets you learn from chefs. So to jump right into it, use an instant read cooking thermometer. So an instant read cooking thermometer kind of looks, it's got usually a digital monitor on it, and then it's got a spike. And the idea is you can spike it into a piece of meat or even the center of a pie or whatever it needs to be. And on the little digital display, it'll show the temperature. And you can have that. It's a digital read thermometer that you actually poke into something. Or now you even have these gun ones where you can basically shoot a laser at whether it's a piece of meat again or the middle of a baked good or whatever, and it'll shoot back a temperature. The accuracy is getting really good on these, but these are a crucial instrument in a lot of restaurant kitchens. And I mean, the quickest way to screw up a $30 ribeye is to overcook it, obviously. And you find them in most professional kitchens. The instant read thermometer will never leave you wondering if something's cooked through again. Very simple tool, very effective. You can get them now for like 40 or 50 bucks. Even Emeril Lagasse, I'll give the quote here that I have down. It says, "I think many cooks are afraid of undercooked meats. A good thermometer is a cook's best friend." That's very true. A lot of people, out of fear of undercooking something, will consistently overcook. Everybody knows maybe that one recipe that mom used to make, or a friend who overcooks fish, right? Like, fish is something that once you start almost undercooking it on purpose, you'll get better results because by nature you'll be cooking it closer to perfect. Most people go too far the other way and overcook. So use an instant read cooking thermometer. You can pick one up on Amazon, wherever it needs to be. Number 2, set it and forget it. What that means is most restaurant kitchens just have their ovens set at about 350 Fahrenheit or 180 Celsius. And that's because obviously in a restaurant you're cooking multiple dishes at a time. And so you don't really have the benefit of the doubt of being able to adjust oven temperature all the time. So usually restaurants will have a lower temperature oven and a oven set for about 350 Fahrenheit. And I mean, that's if you have the luxury of 2 ovens. A lot of them will just have one oven which is set to one temperature. And again, 350, you can pretty much do whatever you want 350. You can roast off vegetables, you can roast off meats, you know. And then if you want, if you don't know what to put it at for, let's say, braising or slow cooking, 225 Fahrenheit is a great temperature. So your money spot's 350 if you're just doing regular cooking. If you're braising, 225. But you can basically throw anything that you're trying to oven roast in a 350 oven, it's going to be fine. 425 is going to be a bit quicker, 325. But when you read cookbooks and they get too specific with oven temperatures, unless it's baking, it's usually not that big of a deal. With most meat and fish and veg, 350, 375 is fine. Number 3, and this is a very subtle one that most people don't understand about serving food. I call it "that's too hot." So I'm going to read right off the notes here. It says, yes, you can serve dishes too hot for anyone's good. Think soups and broths or dense dishes like lasagna. It's hard to pick up flavors when you're focusing on not burning your mouth. Remember to let certain foods rest a bit. It's better than everyone blowing on each bite at the table. So this again is a very subtle tip, but food temperature is something that's not talked about a lot and done very well in great restaurants. So when you talk about something as simple as a broth, if you bring that thing out and it is literally boiling hot, somebody's going to be so excited to try it at the table. They're basically going to be blowing on it. They're going to put it in their mouth. It's going to be too hot. And they're just going to be so focused on the temperature and not burning themselves. They're not going to get any flavor from those crucial initial bites where everybody gets sort of the highest return. If you think about law of diminishing returns, every bite something gets less and less tasty. Those first couple bites are super important. And having an optimal temperature is so key to that first impression of a dish. So what you should do is really make sure, just like you taste food at the end, like let's say a soup again, for saltiness and seasoning, you should taste it for temperature and go, is this the type of temperature that somebody can dip their spoon in right away, take their first bite, and it's a really satisfying temperature. So that's a subtle trick, but you can serve foods too hot. Number 4. So this is a really great tip. A lot of chefs know. I mean, I call this the Knuckle Shield. This is something that's very easy to Google if you look up how to hold a knife properly or how to hold a chef's knife. I call it the claw or the Knuckle Shield. You can call it whatever you want. But basically, it's when you curl your fingers under your knuckles to create a flat surface so you can rest your knife against it when you chop. Now, again, you can look this up, a quick Google search of how to hold a knife properly. But this is super key because when you tuck your finger tips underneath your knuckles and press the knife against it, it gives you a great guide and accuracy, and it protects the end of your fingers so you're not lopping them off. A lot of people cut like they lay their, like let's say if you're right-handed, they lay their left hand flat on a surface, which fully exposes their fingers. If you curl your fingers under and create that wall, it'll change your accuracy, your speed, and the safety of your cooking. So really simple tip, but it'll 10x your chopping skill almost immediately. On the same notion with knives, I think this is just a very important thing to get out there. This one is just pay someone to sharpen your knives. I know there's people out there that want to get a whetstone or they want to get a steel and they want to do it themselves. And you have to be really, really know what you're doing to sharpen your knives properly. And it's cool if you kind of want to work on that and you want to take the time to learn how to use a whetstone. But for the most part, most people's kitchen knives at home are so dull, they have to be put on a stone to sharpen. The steel, for the most part, and sort of that long rod, that's mostly for just taking like the tiny little burrs off. So sort of taking an edge that's already honed and pretty sharp and making it a little bit sharper. But it's not going to take a really dull knife and make it sharp. So you can take, you can just Google search in your local area knife sharpener. And if you bring your knives in even every 6 months or even every year, it's going to have a huge difference. And remember, having a sharp knife isn't necessarily more dangerous. It's actually a lot of the times more safe because the knife goes exactly where you want it to go. So even with a cheaper Victorinox knife or plastic or simple sort of carbon steel knife, you can get it nice and sharp, and you can do that by taking it to a knife shop. And then, in the meantime, if you want to learn how to sharpen yourselves properly, go ahead. But it's a pretty easy solution. And I still even know a lot of professional chefs that will pay somebody to sharpen their knives. Number 6, make sure you have the right size knife for the job. So again, these are chef's tips. So some of these are based around knives, but this one is a dead simple tip as well. You don't need that sort of knife block brimming with handles that your parents had. Everybody had that, that big wood block that had all the slots in it and there was 12 knives. That's basically because the Cutco dude or the salesman door-to-door salesman would come and sell 15 different knives. Like, listen, you don't need 15 different knives. You basically need a great bread knife, a decent chef's knife, and a paring knife. Paring knife being the small little one used for peeling veg or doing smaller tasks. And even if you have no knives to your name, a good start is just a basic chef's knife, a paring knife, and a bread knife or a serrated knife. And I mean, the truth is most professional chefs use cheap, easy to sharpen paring knives. Like the one you can get from Victorinox that goes for about $7 or $10. I mean, they're easy to sharpen. They're good for the job. And if you're just trying to cut something, like as my friend Chris says, why are you trying to cut a watermelon with a paring knife? Try and choose a bigger knife for that. Or why are you trying to peel a little turnip or a radish with a massive chef's knife? And I mean, I don't even have to explain. Don't start cutting bread and those types of things with a chef's knife. Serrated does the trick for bread. It does really well. It's really good for slicing tomatoes that are really ripe. So with 3 basic knives, you're going to be pretty well equipped. And then you can move on to like fillet knives and that type of thing. But for the most part, a good start is those 3. And the 7th and final tip, which just is an easy one to pick up, and this is a perfect example of why we kind of are doing the podcast. A quick and dirty tip. You're going to remember this one. Go cold to lose fat. And this is very simple. A lot of chefs know this secret. Starting bacon or pancetta in a cold skillet will help render the fat. So the outcome will be crispier, and you'll have less of a threat of burning the bacon. So when you put bacon or pancetta or any fatty meat in a cold pan to start, it'll render out the fat, and you'll see it run off. It'll render out the fat better, rather than if you put it in a searing hot pan. What ends up happening is you're kind of burning the outside exterior of the bacon or pancetta or the cured meat, and you don't get a chance to render out a lot of that fat that the bacon then in turn will cook in and almost fry in its own fat. And it's a great trick. And also you can keep the fat that renders out when you start it in a cold pan, because you'll get a lot more of it. You can keep the fat, and then you can like roast vegetables in it. I mean, you take something like bacon fat or pancetta fat or whatnot, and you can, or another good trick, a good example of rendering from cold is with like a duck breast, the fat side of a duck breast. You start in a cold pan. You can basically roast veg in it. You can do a lot of things, and it is a great medium for cooking to replace butter and oil. So those are 7 tips. I'm glad you tuned in today. Just to review them: use an instant read cooking thermometer. Number 2 is set it and forget it. Basically set your oven at 350. If you don't know what temp to set it at, you can do most things with that temperature. 3, that's too hot, which is my way of saying that you got to just monitor temperature when you serve. It's just as important as seasoning. Making sure like a broth or lasagna or something isn't too hot. Let something sit for a bit if it's going to burn somebody's mouth. 4, the Knuckle Shield. That's just a simple knife technique where you tuck your fingertips under. 5 being, it's always a good idea to maybe pay somebody to sharpen your knives. 6, make sure you have the right size knife for a job. Small being a paring knife. Mid-size being your chef's knife, and then the special jobs or bread cutting, always nice to have a serrated. And then 7, go cold to lose fat, which is start things like bacon, pancetta, cured meats in a cold skillet to help render more fat. Those are the 7 tips for today. I'm Reggie Milligan. I'm a co-founder at Mantry. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's what this podcast is all about. Quick, digestible tips, and we're going to help you cook better. Thank you.